In this video, we're going to talk about the 7 pitch deck rules that founders don't think about until it's too late. And I'm recording this video because I see dozens of pitch decks every week, and I can see these glaring right at me as soon as I open up the pitch deck. And I'm going to send this out to every founder out there who's having me help them with their pitch deck, because they can immediately start to make that adjustment by having these rules right in front of them and understanding why they're breaking them, what to do about it. I'm going to include it all in this video. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang. If we met before, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for dropping by. Use the chapter markers, as always, to skip ahead to the good part of the video. If we haven't met, welcome to my channel. I'm a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits, and that's just a fancy way of saying I failed a bunch of times to your benefit, because I use YouTube videos like this and my channel in general to help founders, especially early stage founders raising early stage capital, avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made. It's not to say you're not going to make mistakes, but I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier. I've raised over $100 million from my startups, other people's startups, as well as startup funds. I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer for Startups.com, where I work with a team that has raised $750 million plus for other startups that have gone on to raise millions more, gone public for billions. That's the type of background and the understanding that we have when it comes to pitch decks and raising money. If you're already part of Startups.com, thank you so much for checking this out. If you're not familiar with Startups.com, head on over to the website. I got a special offer for you in the description of this video for a free 14-day trial. While everybody's here, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Help me out with this YouTube video. Let's jump in to the 7 rules that founders don't think about until it's too late. The first rule is don't use slogans, buzz, or inside jargon to describe your startup, especially on the cover. I see this happen all the time. Right away, when I open up the pitch deck, I see a slogan and it makes no sense. I don't know what the startup does, what industry that we're in. It's just something buzzy and hypey that's put there to try and get people excited or show off your marketing chops. That's not the place for a pitch deck. A pitch deck is something that an investor looks at, and they want to be able to know what they're getting into right away from slide 1. Here's the hint for this. Would a non-technical outsider understand what you do and repeat it to you? Would they be able to read it and say, okay, I know what you do, even if they don't have that inside jargon, that language, understanding technically or industry terms? Would they understand it? And most of the time, founders are so much in their heads, they go, well, of course they'd understand it. I understand it. And that's the problem. You're not pitching to the investor. You're pitching to yourself in your own mind, your own echo chamber, and that's where problems start to occur. Now, founders say this to me all the time. I only want to pitch investors who do understand my industry, understand that inside language. I don't want somebody's mom, all of the mom test, to be able to read my pitch deck and understand it. And I get it. I understand where you might be coming from, but you're taking a big chance. What are the chances that that investor has the amount of technical knowledge and understanding of the industry as you do? You are the expert. That's why they're investing in you. And most of the time, while they may have a general understanding of the industry that they want to invest in, especially if your deck aligns with their investment thesis, they're not the ones that are going to make the final decision, or they're not the ones going to do all the due diligence. They want to get in, understand, make a sorting decision, put you on the pile of the maybes, and then keep going. But if you are creating too much cognitive friction for them and they have to work too hard to understand, then you're going to lose that chance. Why do you want to take that risk? Many times you'll have a scout, an analyst, or an associate that doesn't even have the same information as the general partner or the actual investor. You want to make sure it appeals to them as well. And they'll be inviting in other experts as they do more due diligence, and that's where you can shine. That's where you can come up with all your technical knowledge and sound really smart, put the technical deck together and present it to them and wow them with everything that you know. But in the beginning, don't take that chance. Don't use hype. Don't use jargon. Don't use inside language, and you're going to be okay. At least you'll make that first step, and you'll give your deck the best chance to make it to that next step. What I always say is you would rather be clear and concise rather than cute and clever. And I understand slogans may sound cute and show off how clever you are. This is not the time. Save that for customers. Save that for your advertising. Right now, we just want to put your best foot forward, and that is being clear and concise so the investors get it and they want to read more. Rule number 2 is an offshoot of rule number 1, and that is pitch the investor, not the customer or yourself. I talked about how you can get in your own echo chamber and you can say, of course, everyone's going to understand my pitch deck. It makes sense to me, but you've been sitting on your problem, your solution, your industry for months, even years, just thinking about it, gathering that domain expertise. Nobody can read your mind. Nobody can download that information right from your head into their head. This is not the Matrix where you can just jack somebody in. You have to break it down and, quote, dumb it down for them them, which is the speed and the understanding and the approachability of a normal person. Founders pitch investors like they're the customer, and you can tell by them using you and your language. The investor wants to know that you know your customer, that you've got those unique insights, not become the customer. So when you have a pitch deck and you say, did you know that you can save 50% or more on your car insurance if you invest in my company? You are talking to an investor who might say, you know what, that's not a problem for me. I don't need savings on my car insurance. But if you say, guess what, there are like 50 million people that can't afford their car insurance, and 15% savings, Geico could actually make a huge difference, and this company is going to make a lot of money. Geico, well, then the investor goes, oh yeah, I know lots of people who struggle with insurance, or I can imagine that problem happening. But if you're like, you've got this problem and it's yours to solve and you need to invest in me so I can solve your problem, they are not going to be interested. You're going to weird them out. There's this cognitive dissonance that starts to happen and they get disconnected. Further on top of this, you need to know who you are solving the problem for, and you need to adjust your language to reflect them, not the investor. I know founders that take this a step too far and they say, you're going to make tons of money. You're getting in on the ground level of $1 trillion unicorn company. Investors are not interested. That's the same type of hype and buzz that you would have for your customers, just for investors, and it doesn't move the needle for them. And that's why I ask founders, who are you solving the problem for? Adjust your language to say, these people refer to your users and their problem. Include the size, scope, and the severity if they don't solve the problem. So you show the investor that you have an insight on the people who are going to be paying you your money so that they make an ROI, that your startup is profitable. That's the reason you have to be very clear and focused on your ICP, which affects your market, but it's not your investor. I repeat, your investor is not your market. Stop talking to them. Stop talking to yourself. Talk about the user and present it to the investor in a way that compels them to want to give you their money. Rule number 3, every slide should be summarized in one sentence. You have plenty of opportunity to get into details later, such as due diligence. When you're talking, you're in the socialization phase. If it's not one sentence, you don't understand your startup enough, nor will the investor, and most likely you have a solution looking for a problem. This is the biggest reason that I see pitch decks fail. I have many, many very intelligent founders that have come up with great solutions. But guess what happens? The founders fall in love with their solution because they can build it. Maybe it scratches an itch. They've been dreaming about it. And then they try and find some problem and they create some pitch deck because they need funding, and it becomes an afterthought when it should have been the opposite way around. Founders should have started with the problem, validated their idea, found out what customers are thinking, how they talk about it, not just idea validation, but customer discovery, demand discovery, and presented that to the investor. And that's how I know a pitch deck is well thought out and usually leads to positive outcomes like funding. Einstein said, if you can't simplify something enough, you don't understand it enough. And that's where I think founders can fall into the trap of taking their knowledge for granted and becoming lazy. The onus is not on the investor or the person reading your pitch deck. The onus is on you, the communicator, the sender, the one writing the pitch deck, to make it very clear and concise. And that's why every sentence counts. My colleague Will Schroeder, CEO and founder of Stars.com, always says, every single extra word becomes your enemy. It creates cognitive friction. And I always say that if investors have to work too hard to understand your pitch deck, you're going to lose them. Every single redundant sentence, every single time that you put a paragraph of text in there, that you don't simplify it down so that they understand very clear, it's sharp, and it resonates with them, you will decrease your chances of them sticking around long enough for that magic moment for them to say, all right, I'm ready to take the next step and consider writing you a check. And don't get me wrong, this is not easy. It can be really difficult. I asked a speechwriter the other day who gives regular presentations, how long does it take for you to prepare like a 60-minute speech? And he says, oh, about a day. And I said, how long does it take to get that down to like 10 minutes, 15 minutes? And he says, it takes me a week. And that is the effort that you're going to have to put into your pitch deck. But what it does is it forces you to get really up close and personal with the way you're communicating and how you understand the nuances of your startup. And you can get it figured out so succinctly that you can communicate it with that same type of clarity that makes investors think, this individual knows how to communicate, and this skill is going to help them with not just investors, but customers, future partners, collaborators, the market in general, for future rounds, other people that you need to bring on board. And that is a skill that takes time to hone. And founders, by the way, I have a little bone to pick here. When I tell you to take your pitch deck to ChatGPT and say, break this down for me and boil it down to one sentence, I'm not telling you because I'm lazy or I don't want to help you. I'm doing it because these tools are better than I could ever do by myself. And I want you to learn how to use the tools. I am not pawning you off. I am giving you a superior option, another opportunity to learn the skills on what it takes, because other founders are using AI. Other founders are using these tools to very, very promising results, and they're creating competitive advantages for themselves. And if you're not going to do it and you just want me to spoon feed you and just say, here's what you have to do, then we are going to lose this battle. I'm not doing my job and you're not growing as a founder. Rule number 4, if your hyperbolic statements aren't battle tested, they'll make you look bad. What do I mean by this? Founders fill their pitch decks all the time thinking that they have to really impress the investor by making certain types of statements. Here's the hint. How do you know that you are the first, or you're the only, or that you're going to revolutionize your industry? Are you sure about this? Have you battle tested it? That's a big claim. And typically what happens is investors roll their eyes and say, but it's just not true. And what will happen is you'll get into your own cognitive biases and you won't see the forest through the trees. You won't see your competitors. You won't see the threats lurking up and sneaking up on you because you're so in your head and you think, oh, we're the only ones doing it. The fact of the matter is, most likely not. As the Chief Strategy Officer for Startups.com, at any given time, I'm working with hundreds of startups. And when you come to me with your idea, I can literally throw a rock and hit about a dozen other founders that are trying to solve the same problem as you. Maybe not the same way as you, but I have a vantage point that you normally don't have. I see the forest for all the trees, not have to look through the forest through the trees like you have to. And I can tell you that if you come to me and say, we're the only ones doing this, and I'm looking at all these other founders and go, yeah, no, that founder's doing that founder's doing it. Like I said, maybe not in the same way. How do you think that makes you look? So you don't want to say, oh, we're going to innovate, we're going to disrupt, we're going to transform all this. Just give me the goods, explain it very simply. This is what we plan to do. These are the unique insights. And let me, as the investor, be surprised of what you're bringing to the table without all the hype, without all the buzz. You don't have to lace it all. Just give me the straight goods and I'll be impressed with you. Rule number 5, generic statements are just as bad as hyperbolic buzz that nobody cares about. What do I mean by generic statements? Here's the test. If you can swap your logo of your startup with another startup and it wouldn't change anything at all, then you have to focus on differentiation. You have an issue with your pitch and investors are going to see that a mile away because that is what they are thinking. This was a lesson I learned in advertising and positioning, the differentiation. If you have a restaurant and you say we have the best food at the lowest prices, guess what? Somebody else can say, I have the best food at the lowest prices. Think about hotels for a second. And I take this from Seth Godin. We're talking about differentiation. And he's a marketing guru. And he said, you look at a hotel and you look at the side of their building or you look at their advertising and it's all the same thing. These are the amenities that we offer. We got great location. We got quiet rooms. We got fast internet. We got a pool, all that stuff. I just stayed at one of those generic hotels just this past week. But if you change the logos and you change it from Marriott to Hilton or whatever else you got, Sheraton, nobody's going to know what the difference is and what to expect in terms of experience. But if you put a Nike logo on the side of the building, immediately I think to myself, guess what? Nobody can put that Nike logo in there, and I'm expecting something different to happen inside that hotel versus just the generic ones. It's the same thing with startups, especially today in the AI age. People are AI washing their startups and they're saying, we use AI to do this. But there's nothing different. It says nothing different. I have no expectation of their founder just slapping AI on the side of their building, their pitch deck, their startup, and saying, come do business with us. But you don't have the brand recognition of a Nike. And that's why you must use clear, concise language, not cute and clever, to explain how your AI works, how you're different. What's different about what you're building and why you're the ones to pull it off. That's what the investor is looking for. But try that simple test. Swap out your logo for another logo and think to yourself, have I said anything different? You want to make sure that you are saying things completely differentiated and say it in a way that makes investors stop. You're disrupting their regular bias and make them step back and say, I've never heard it said this way. I better pay attention. There's something different here. Rule number 6, you have 30, 60, and 90 seconds maximum on all slides. Here's an inside look at how the mind of an investor works. You basically have 30 seconds to get the investor to understand what your slide says, and then 60 seconds for them to look more and maybe look at some of the bullet points or maybe some of the graphics, the images, and then 90 seconds to stop and go, let me consider the insight. It's novel. I like it. Anything more than those 30, 60, 90 seconds, such as a wall of text where an investor looks and says, great, I'm going to be spending at least 2, 3, 5 minutes reading this. You're not going to get your point across. The investor is going to abandon ship, give up on your deck even before they started, especially if it's a screener introduction deck where they literally have 2 to 3 minutes to get through the whole thing and decide whether they're going to contact you for the next steps to learn more. I want you to understand something here. This is not about you. This is the conditioning of the investor. An investor looks at maybe a dozen pitch decks per week. If they're a firm, they're looking at dozens per day, possibly. Think about Y Combinator when they get like 15,000 applications and they can only invite maybe 200 people to their batch. How long that they take for each pitch and how many tools they have to use. And so if an investor has been looking at the same old formatted pitch decks that are just inconceivable, they're not understandable, they're just nonsensical, how do you think the investor feels when they get to your pitch deck? Now you look at your pitch deck with fresh eyes and you're emotionally invested and you think your pitch deck is the greatest thing. But if you think that investor is going to stop and go, let me just spend some time, let me go outside and grab a seat on a grassy knoll and go through this pitch deck because I got an hour on my lunch sipping my tea, I'm going to understand every nuance about this pitch deck, you've got another thing coming. An investor just rolls their eyes and says, great, cover page, same signals that I'm getting. They've got this bias that's been built in, recency bias that's just over and over again, mind-numbingly repetition of looking at bad pitch decks. They're not going to give yours very much of a chance. That's why you only have 30 seconds to make that impression. And if you can't nail it in that 30 seconds, they're not going to give you the 60 seconds and the 90 seconds to go deeper, which is where you're going to really set yourself apart. So make those first 30 seconds count. Use all the tools and tips that I put in terms of making pitch decks that I offer out there on this channel, what I'm talking about in this video, and maximize your opportunity. Sharpen the tip of that arrow, make it fly true, and you'll be just fine. The final rule is never pitch a startup without some form of traction. Get creative. Let me repeat this. Never, and I say never, pitch a startup without some sort of traction. And you can get creative. There are so many ways to figure out traction, whether it's just talking to customers, going out and putting out a demo, making sure that you understand and that you're doing things instead of asking for money and saying, I'm not going to do anything until I get your money. Don't do it, especially today, because investors will not fund you to figure things out. If you don't have figured out and you say, I need the funds to even begin the exploration, it's not going to happen, especially today with AI, how easy it is to go out and put out MVPs, get things in front of customers, talk to customers, social listening. The distribution channels are fragmented, but there's so many free ones that you can at least do something, because investors invest in ongoing execution. They want to know that you are good for it and that you are doing things whether you have their money or not. Investors expect you to be exceptional without their money, and so they pour gasoline on the fire that when you get their money, man, you are off to the races, hyper growth, your execution goes to a whole next level, and they want to make sure that you're good for it and they can trust you with their funds, or else they are not interested. I know I talk on this very channel that it is possible to get funded without any traction, and it is still true. You all have a better than 0% chance, but do you want to increase your odds? That's the question I have for you. That's why I'm making it a rule. If you don't have traction, put your pitch deck down, or while you're developing your pitch deck, go out and get some form of traction, measurable traction that you can put in front of the investors. That will single-handedly set you apart from so many other pre-seed or early stage founders who are out there thinking an investor is going to rescue them. If you have a pitch deck without traction, consider this rule and say, you know what? I need to do something about this even before I take the next step in improving my pitch deck. And as I keep saying over and over again, and I'll put out more videos on this channel, there are ways to get traction without having to spend money on ads, customer acquisition, on dev shops, developers, hiring CTOs if you're non-technical. There is a plethora of ways to go out and do it out there. Let me know if you've got questions on it, and I'll keep putting out the content, and we'll share because I want you to get funded. Watch some of these other videos, especially if you know that you've broken one or many of these rules like I have in the past. That's what I'm here for. Let me know what you think. And thanks for hanging out with me in this video. I'll see you in the next one.